Everyone, I'm Frank McNally and I'm a Prostate Cancer UK volunteer. Prostate Cancer UK is the UK's largest men's health charity who fight for men to survive prostate cancer and enjoy a better quality of life. As Ronan said, I've been working with the WELL team now for over 6 years, delivering talks right across different departments across the NICS. And I would like to thank Ronan and the WELL team again for the opportunity to deliver today's presentation to you. I'll say thank you for giving up your time to attend, and I hope you find it informative. This is a short presentation which should last about 25-30 minutes, and will cover what is a prostate, conditions that can affect the prostate, the risks, common symptoms, and what action you can take. What I would say at the start is I'm not a health professional or medically trained, so I will be unable to answer any medical related questions. If you have any concerns following this and you want to find out more, I would encourage you to speak to your GP or visit the PC UK website and contact their specialist nurses. By the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be better informed about prostate cancer and the need for men to be more aware of the risks and actions to take and any concerns you may have. As Ronan said, I'm happy to take questions at the end, or if you want to use the chat facility to put in a question, I will try and get back to you. Just before we begin the presentation, I would like to give you a brief overview of my history. I'm a prostate cancer survivor, having been diagnosed in 2008 at the age of 50. I had none of the common symptoms that we'll talk about later. I had a radical prostatectomy, which was open surgery to remove the prostate, and thankfully no other treatment was required. And how I was diagnosed was simply through a blood test, which is called PSA, and I'll cover the PSA test later. Before 2008, I had been getting regular blood tests for my cholesterol and blood pressure, but when I turned 50, my doctor, for some reason, decided to do the PSA test, which showed up that there was a problem with my prostate. And to be honest with you, back then, I couldn't have told you what a prostate was, didn't know what a PSA test was, but I soon found out. After another PSA test, I was referred to Craigavon Area Hospital, where the consultant basically said out of 1 in 3 chance this could be prostate cancer. And after a biopsy, it confirmed that a quarter of my prostate was cancerous. It all happened very quickly. The PSA test was early March, the biopsy was April, and my removal was in June. Thankfully, as I said, no further treatment was required, and over 14 years later, I'm still here. So I'm very lucky to survive it. I'm very lucky to be here. I'm very lucky that doctor did what he did. But, you know, I wanted to give something back, and the best way I thought of giving something back was to become a volunteer for the charity and go out and raise awareness with men and their families, because it's not just the man who's affected by this. I mean, it's their family, their partner, their children, everything. And even now, when I give these talks, I think back to the time I had to sit down with my children and go through it with them, because I didn't know what the outcome would be. But as I say, thankfully, I'm a survivor. I'm also a coordinator of the Northern Ireland Volunteer Hub for Prostate Cancer UK, based here in Northern Ireland. We have around 25 to 30 volunteers currently, men and women, who have all been impacted by prostate cancer, and do what I do in terms of raising awareness, fundraise, you know, host information stands at various events. And we also work very closely with Prostate Cancer UK volunteers across the regions. Prostate Cancer UK, as I say, is one of the biggest men's health charity. They don't have a base here in Northern Ireland. Our volunteer manager would be based in Glasgow, but they're very supportive of what we do. And obviously we are their volunteers. So without further ado, I'll start the presentation. As I said, it's really know your prostate. So before I go on to the next slide, as I said, when I was diagnosed, I didn't know what a prostate was. I didn't even know I had one. But what is a prostate? Well, the prostate is a gland that sits beneath the bladder, and its main job is to help make semen. And as you can see, it's directly onto the bladder. So if you have any issues with your prostate or any issues, toiletry issues, it could be related back to your prostate. As you can see, the following people have a prostate: men, trans men, non-binary people who are assigned male at birth, and some intersex people. If anybody wants to follow up on any of those, what they are, feel free to ask the question and I'll explain it. And its main function is to help make semen. Conditions that affect the prostate, mainly the enlarged prostate, prostatitis, and prostate cancer. The enlarged prostate, if I go back to the previous slide, bear with me. You can just imagine if your prostate, which is about the size of a walnut, if it enlarges, then it's obviously going to narrow the urethra tube where we pee from. So that causes problems, causes pain. So it narrows that tube. So that's a sign that there's something wrong with your prostate. The second one is really when my doctor initially took the blood test, thought it could be it's inflammation of the prostate. 1 and 2, if you suffer from 1 and 2, it doesn't mean that you have prostate cancer, or it doesn't mean it will lead to prostate cancer. Both are very treatable, and people do suffer from them. But as I say, it doesn't increase your risk of getting prostate cancer. So know your risk. Currently at the moment, what Prostate Cancer UK say is in UK, 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. For Black men, that is reduced to 1 in 4, which, as you can see, is, for Black men, it is a real issue. Now, research is continuing into why they're at a higher risk. Prostate Cancer UK, as I say, are carrying out research, but there's nothing they can pinpoint currently at the moment. What they're looking at, it could be an issue with genes in the Black community, but there is research going on at the moment. And what they've done the last number of years is get on board Black ambassadors, ex-footballers, sports people, TV people, to try to be ambassadors to raise the awareness within the Black community. And recently here in Northern Ireland, the volunteer hub that I work with have started to work with the Black community and have carried out a number of presentations and also information awareness days with the Black community here. So family history as well. A lot of people, men, don't really realize about the family history. If your father or brother has had prostate cancer, you're 2.5 times more likely to get prostate cancer. And a lot of men, as I say, are not aware of this. In terms of my story, my brother and my son, who's just turned 40, are both on the radar because of me. Now, my son has only turned 40, and what his GP has recommended from the age of 45, he will start getting the PSA test. My brother, who is 57, has started to get the PSA test once he turned 50. And thankfully, he is showing he's fine at the moment. But again, it increases the risk. In terms of your mother or sister, particularly at an early age, 60 or whatever, if they had breast cancer, it also increases your risk. And that's because the cancer gene, the BRCA gene, is very similar to prostate cancer. And also age 50 or over, as us men get over the age of 50, your GP will tell you we will suffer prostate problems, not necessarily cancer. I'm not trying to frighten people here. Not necessarily cancer. It could be an enlarged prostate. It could be the inflammation, not necessarily prostate cancer, but it does increase your risk. And from the age of 50, we should be more aware of getting checked. I talked about prostate cancer symptoms earlier. I had none of the symptoms, and when you are at an early age, most men do not have the symptoms. The symptoms really start when the cancer start impacts on the urethral tube or on the actual gland itself. But there are common symptoms that PCUK would refer to, and these are some of them. Needing to say wee or pee more often than usual, day or night. Difficulty starting to wee, straining, taking a long time to finish, a weak flow, feeling your bladder hasn't emptied, needing to rush, sometimes leaking or dribbling urine. And there are other symptoms, pain in the back, hips or pelvis, problems getting an erection, blood in your urine. But all these symptoms, I would point out, doesn't mean that you have prostate cancer. It means you have an issue with your prostate and you should start speaking to your GP and getting checked. It could be a very important conversation because it could save your life. As I say, doesn't necessarily mean you have prostate cancer, but it means there is an issue. As I've already covered that in terms of most men in the early stage have no symptoms at all. I just go back to the pain in the back, hips and pelvis. I'm sure many of you remember not too long ago, the TV presenter Bill Turnbull died, unfortunately, of prostate cancer. And Bill initially had no symptoms. The only thing that he had recollected was pain in the back and the pelvis, which he put down to old sports injuries. But unfortunately, he left it too late to get checked. And when he did get checked, it was prostate cancer that had actually spread to his hips and his pelvis. And obviously, once it moves out of the gland, it does necessarily hit the bones on these particular areas. And basically, it is fatal, because once it's out of the gland, it does have a terminal impact. So take action. Action you can take. I talked about the PSA test earlier. And the PSA test it's a simple blood test. I mean, if you go in and get your blood pressure or your bloods checked or your liver checked or whatever, in that little envelope that the doctor or GP would put the blood sample, there's another box that says PSA. And it is a simple blood test. And if you're over 50, you have a family history, or you're black, or you're at a higher risk, then talk to your GP, who will talk over the pros and cons of the PSA test. The problem with the PSA test is it's not a definitive test. It will not indicate that you have prostate cancer. It will indicate there's an issue with your prostate that may need further investigation. Currently at the moment, and it didn't happen when I was diagnosed, what does happen now with your PSA test, if there is an issue, they take an NP-MRI scan. That's a 3D scan of your prostate area, which will indicate or will show up any cancerous cells. So it will help indicate for the biopsy, and will also help further down the line if you require treatment, where they have to pinpoint that treatment and what treatment they can recommend. But as I said, the PSA test is not a definitive test. Some GPs are reluctant to take it or to give you a PSA test because it's not definitive, because they look at it maybe putting a man down a route that necessarily he doesn't need to go down. But if you're over 50, you have any concerns, your family history, you have a right. And if your GP refuses, what I would recommend and what PCUK recommends is you contact their specialist nurses. The information is on their website, and that's a confidential number where you can talk to the nurses who deal with this day and daily, and they will arm you with the questions to ask your GP, to go back to your GP, or even before you go to your GP, in case you are refused. And like always quote an example, I gave all these talks for Ronan about 4 years ago in Goodwood House. And I remember a guy coming over to me at the end of it and said, Frank, you know, this PSA test, it's all well and good, but I've went to my GP and been refused. And I said, well, have you symptoms or whatever? He says, well, I have some of the symptoms you're talking about. I'm concerned. So I referred him to the specialist nurses, excuse me, and he went to the specialist nurses. And 3 weeks later, I got an email to say, thank you, Frank. I went to specialist nurses, back to the GP. He eventually gave the PSA test, and thankfully everything was okay. It was an enlarged prostate. But going to those specialist nurses helped him go back to his GP with more confidence to get the blood test done. Currently, at the moment, Prostate Cancer UK are spending a lot of money, a lot of funding on research, diagnosis, early treatments, but more importantly, they're looking at a screening test for men, and they're hoping in the next 5 to 10 years. I know it seems a long time away, but these things take time, that there will be a screening test for over 50, men over 50, a bit like the breast cancer for women and cervical cancer tests as well. So that will be a screening test. So as I said, what you can do is, you know, if you feel you're at a higher risk, you feel your family history, as I said, I've covered it, you go to your GP, he'll talk over the pros and cons. You can speak to the specialist nurses, and you can share information with people you know. You can have a chat with people. Sometimes talking to other people helps as well. In February this year, Prostate Cancer UK introduced a risk checker. And basically, the reason they developed this along with the NHS was because they reckon since COVID, over the last couple of years, they estimate that approximately 14,000 men have not started treatment for prostate cancer since the beginning of the pandemic. So they're encouraging men and people to use the risk checker. And the risk checker takes 30 seconds. It's a simple 3 questions. How old are you? Has your father or brother had prostate cancer? And do you have black or mixed black ethnic background? You simply answer those questions, hit the button, and it'll take you through the next steps. And they reckon since it was launched, over 500,000 people have went on the risk checker. And as I said, they reckon that the referrals have now increased by over 20%. So it's on the website. They encourage people to go on and use it. As I said, it's very simple to use, only 3 questions. And it will arm you with the information to take the next steps. And as we know, over the last couple of years, we've all had issues and probably still having issues with trying to get a doctor's appointment or whatever, because of the increased demand on the health service at the moment. However, what we would say is don't let that put you off. You know, if you have any concerns, as I say, if you have family history, or you have any concerns with any symptoms, make the call. They will ring you back. If you can't get an appointment face-to-face, they'll ring you back. Or if you feel you need to go to the hospital, I mean, there's all the control measures in place. What I would say is, as a volunteer for Prostate Cancer UK, we are not encouraging people to run willy-nilly to their GP or to hospitals because of the pressures at the moment. However, that should not put you off looking after your own health. Because in the end of the day, you know better than anyone. If you're not feeling well, you know, talk to your GP, talk to your health professional. Don't be put off. It could be the most important conversation. It could save your life. Before I finish, I've said any questions here, and I'll take any questions at the end, or if there's any questions in the chat, I will try and get to them. But before I finish, as I said, that this presentation basically, you know, what is your prostate, the risks, the symptoms, action to take. And I just want to let you have some further information Across the UK, prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men and is currently sitting just behind breast cancer in terms of numbers. As I said earlier, in the UK, 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer at some point in their lives. And currently, 1 man dies every 45 minutes in the UK with prostate cancer. More than 47,000 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer every year in the UK. And in Northern Ireland, over 1,300 men are diagnosed every year in Northern Ireland. Also in Northern Ireland, over 300 men die each year with prostate cancer. And it's estimated by 2030, it'll be the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the UK. Now, the numbers are going up. And I think one of the reasons they are going up is because more men are getting checked and getting caught and detected prior to this. And I've been volunteering for over 10 years. And I have to say, even through COVID, the number of requests for these talks, the number of requests for information, the number of calls that we are getting, just men wanting to talk to someone, are on the increase. And I have to say, it's great. It's not great. I'm not saying it's great in terms of people getting cancer, men getting cancer. It's great that people are now being more open, wanting to find out information, wanting to know about prostate cancer. I don't want to end on a sort of negative note. I like to end on a positive note when I do this presentation because it's very treatable. It's the size of a walnut. If caught within that walnut, it's very treatable. So early detection, like most cancers, is essential. So the earlier you get checked, the earlier you have the conversation, the better. Currently at the moment, there's over 400,000 men in the UK living with or after prostate cancer. And in Northern Ireland, that figure is over 9,000 men are living with or after prostate cancer. And thankfully, I'm one of them. And as I say, it's great to have the opportunity to speak here today, to raise awareness. It's a simple presentation, but hopefully you'll take something away from it, make you think, maybe want to go check the website further to get more information. But I'd like to thank Ronan and the Well team for their continued support to me, not just me, there's other NI Hub volunteers have delivered these talks for Ronan, and we will continue to do so to help men and their families. And if one man goes away from any of our presentations, gets checked and detected and survives, then what more can we ask for? So thank you. I see there's some questions in the chat. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask questions, please feel free. And there's one thing I